Here is a question that sounds completely ridiculous until you actually stop to think about it. Why do we cook our food? Literally every other animal on this planet eats their meals raw. Lions aren't out there marinating their zebras. Chimpanzees don't roast their fruit over an open fire. Sharks have never once tried to pan-sear a seal. Yet for humans, this weirdly specific everyday habit isn't just about making dinner taste better. It is the exact biological boundary that decided whether our species would survive or vanish forever. Let's start with what the world looked like before any of this happened, because understanding the before makes the after genuinely astonishing. Imagine being an early hominid wandering the African savanna. Your entire existence revolves around one relentless, exhausting physical activity. Not hunting, not gathering, chewing. If you are eating a strictly raw wild diet, pulling tough tubers from the dirt, chewing through fibrous leaves and raw muscle meat, your jaw has to work constantly. In 2011, evolutionary biologist Chris Organ calculated exactly what would happen if modern humans had to eat like our closest primate relatives. The math is brutal. Without fire to break down thick plant cell walls and tough animal tissues, you would have to spend 6 to 8 hours every single day just chewing your food. 6 to 8 hours. It is not just a daily chore. It is a biological prison. When you are chewing for a third of your waking life, you cannot build complex tools. You cannot develop deep social structures. You are simply a walking food processing machine. Now, here is the part that most people don't realize, and it is the part that makes this story genuinely fascinating rather than just historically interesting. Heat changes the entire equation. Fire acts as a pre-digester. It breaks down tight protein bonds and gelatinizes stubborn starches before the food even enters your mouth. Suddenly, that grueling 8-hour shift of crushing fibers drops to just about 1 hour a day. Which leaves us with a massive evolutionary question. What exactly did our ancestors do with all that newly freed time? To understand what our ancestors did with all that newly freed time, we have to look inside the body at a biological zero-sum game. In 1995, anthropologists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler proposed something called the expensive tissue hypothesis. It comes down to a brutal evolutionary trade-off between your gut and your brain. Both of these are incredibly greedy organs. They demand massive amounts of calories just to exist. Evolution is a strict accountant, and the reality is, you physically cannot afford to maintain the giant, complex digestive tract required to process tough raw food and a giant, hyper-intelligent brain at the exact same time. The metabolic math simply does not work. You do not have the energy budget for both. Cooking solved this impossible math problem. When you put raw ingredients over an open flame, you are essentially outsourcing your digestion. You are using the fire as your external stomach. The heat does the exhausting metabolic heavy lifting, breaking down cellular walls and tough fibers before the food even enters your mouth. Because the fire was doing the work, our ancestors no longer needed miles of thick, heavy intestines to survive. Our guts literally shrank. And this leads to the twist, the part that fundamentally changes how we view our own history. The causal arrow runs in the opposite direction from what most people assume. We like to flatter ourselves by thinking that early humans got incredibly smart, developed massive brains, and then used that profound intelligence to invent cooking. The biological truth is the exact reverse. We learned to cook, our digestive tracts shrank, and all that newly freed up metabolic energy was instantly redirected upstairs to power a rapidly expanding skull. Less gut, more brain. Now, here's the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. What exactly happened to the human body in the fossil record around the time cooking is thought to have begun? If you look back roughly 1.9 million years ago to a species called Homo erectus, the physical architecture of our ancestors suddenly and dramatically changed. According to the groundbreaking work of primatologist Richard Wrangham, the fossil evidence from this exact period shows a massive, undeniable biological shift. Our ancestors' canine teeth shrank. Their jaws became remarkably weaker. Their rib cages, which previously flared outward to accommodate massive, heavy digestive tracts, suddenly narrowed, and their skulls ballooned in size. This was not a gradual, random mutation. This was the anatomical signature of a species that had discovered how to process its food before eating it. Homo erectus had successfully outsourced its digestion to the campfire. But fire did more than just soften tough meat. It was humanity's very first chemical detoxification and calorie unlocking system. In the wild, the environment is actively trying to protect itself. Many of the most energy-dense tubers and roots, things like wild potatoes or ancestral cassava, are packed with natural, deadly toxins or locked behind rigid walls of resistant starch. If you eat them raw, your digestive system simply cannot absorb the nutrients. In many cases, eating them raw will outright poison you. Heat destroys those defenses. Fire neutralizes the chemical toxins of wild plants and breaks open those stubborn starch molecules. Suddenly, a toxic, inedible root becomes a safe, massive payload of pure, easily accessible calories. Wrangham and his colleagues realized that cooking was not just an evolutionary convenience. It was a strict biological necessity that granted early humans access to a vast, previously locked vault of energy. The wild environment went from a hostile, deadly landscape to a boundless supermarket, all because of a controlled spark. You physically cannot sustain a massive human brain that demands 20% of your body's resting energy on a diet of raw leaves and tough, uncooked meat. You just cannot. The metabolic math of human evolution requires a massive energetic shortcut. No fire, no unlocked calories, no cooking, no survival. Our entire anatomy is a living, breathing monument to this specific technological breakthrough. You are walking around right now in a body built by and completely dependent on cooked food, which brings us all the way from a dusty savanna 1.9 million years ago, straight back to the reality of your own kitchen. The next time you stand in a kitchen and turn on a burner or light a grill, take 1 second to understand the full weight of what you are doing. You are not just preparing a meal. You are participating in the single most important technological breakthrough in the history of our species. Every time you apply heat to food, you are echoing a 1.9 million-year-old spark that fundamentally changed the trajectory of life on Earth. It is the invisible thread that connects you directly to our ancestors on the African savanna. The exact mechanism that shrank our guts, expanded our minds, and allowed us to build the modern world. Every meal you cook is a continuation of the act that made you human, and that profound ancient legacy remains absolutely true, even when you are doing it at 11 p.m. with questionable leftovers, standing in your kitchen in the dark, realizing the instant noodles are hopelessly stuck to the bottom of the pan.